Alright, lesson 4 is about evaluating resources. It's really easy to put information on the internet and anyone can do it. There are reliable sources of information, but how do you know which ones are trustworthy? While library databases access scholarly journals and sources published by credible authors, they also contain stories from Cosmopolitan magazine, and the internet and Google don't discriminate. Is Wikipedia reliable? That blog that you're reading? That organization's website? Is Animal Planet's site really college appropriate? There are tools in this lesson to help you evaluate the internet and whether to include the source in your paper or not. Government, including federal, state, and local sites, may provide laws, statistics, health information, timely information on issues concerning all citizens, or information about government agencies. These sites are not only some of the most widely available on the internet, but some of the most useful and reliable. The domain name .gov is an indication that the site is a governmental one, although some government agencies use other domain names. Those listed right here on the PowerPoint are .gov sites. Here is the CDC's travel website, and you can see that it's .gov. The U.S. Government Printing Office, the GPO, also .gov. And the Library of Congress's Thomas website, also .gov. And from our lesson with search engines, you learned how to pull something up that's just a .gov website. There are a couple exceptions to this rule. For example, Escambia County, Alabama, some government sites use .us at the end of their website, and this is kind of a thing that goes for countries outside the U.S. Canada uses .ca. Sometimes the European Union has .eu, and those are going to be governmental websites for outside the United States. Another exception is sometimes governmental websites will use .com rather than .us or .gov. MyFlorida is an example of that. Education sites may provide scholarly works from academic departments, course syllabi, class schedules, homepages of colleges and high schools, online courses, library catalogs, and links to information databases. Education sites tend to be reliable, although individual student or faculty pages may vary. The domain name .edu is an indication that the site is from an educational institution, although that's not always true. Some educational sites include the following: the World War I Document Archive, Harvard Libraries page, University of Buffalo's digital collection, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and the National Security Archive. I'm not going to go through all of these, but when something is an educational site, that tends to be a little bit more reliable than something that's a .com. They're putting it on the web for educational purposes. Sometimes it comes from some sort of fund to make things open access for scholars. So those are good sites to look for. Nonprofit and advocacy sites are a little touch and go. They're not always reliable. Sometimes there's a vested interest which affects the information on the website. The NRA, for example, National Rifle Association of America, sometimes that's going to be not inclusive in its information. So it'll have, statistics on gun control, but they're going to be different statistics than you might find on, some sort of pro-gun control site. So you want to take that into account, whether there's sort of a bias, and we'll go through that in a little bit with the upcoming questions, how to determine whether a site is good for college research. The primary purpose of a news site is to provide current information about newsworthy topics. In many cases, these sites will provide the most up-to-date information available. Many major newspapers and television news networks have websites. As these are commercial operations, the domain name .com will be the most frequently found within a news site. Some typical news sites include CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, and USA Today. And these are also a little touch and go on credibility. You'll need to look at who's writing the article, what the reputation of the site that it's published on is, if they've had any major faux pas when publishing the wrong information, and that sort of thing. Again, coming up in the questions. A business or marketing webpage is one sponsored by a commercial enterprise. Business sites may provide such resources as annual reports, company histories, stock quotes, and product advertising. These sites may also actively promote the sale of items. The domain name .com will be the most frequently found within this site. Some of the typical business sites include the following: Apple, Interlight Surf and Skate, and the Drowsy Poet Coffee Company. So again, you want to look at what the interest is in these sites. Some of their promotional information may kind of gloss over certain things, and they definitely have something at stake if they're trying to sell you something. It's really These sites are really good for annual reports, company histories if you're looking for who the CEO is, that kind of thing. Um, but otherwise, depending on the type of information, it may be best to steer away from them. You'll be able to evaluate them as we learn the CRAAP test. A personal web page is a web page authored by an individual not officially associated with an educational, organizational, or government institution. These pages vary greatly in terms of content and quality control and should be used cautiously as a source of factual information. They could be a personal site including a regular person's interests or a more professional site including work and biographical information. A variety of domain names may be used for personal web pages. One of the increasingly popular personal sites that are out there are called blogs, and a blogger can post links or opinions or whatever they find interesting or useful and serve as a personal journal for the blogger. So typically blogs are not something that you would want to use unless you're citing some sort of sociological research or trying to prove a point like that, but citing it for factual information is a bad idea in general. Wikipedia is a popular and often controversial online encyclopedia created and maintained by volunteers. Entries can be edited by anyone, regardless of their experience, credentials, or writing credentials. The word wiki comes from the Hawaiian word for fast and indicates a quick website, as well as social software used to create it. Wikis allow groups to collaboratively work together in a virtual environment. Wikipedia has led the movement towards user-created content on the internet and has earned praises for its extensive coverage of topics. At the same time, the collaborative community has been scrutinized for its reliability, accuracy, and uneven quality. I would encourage you to use Wikipedia as a jumping off point but not a primary source. If you really don't know what you're talking about, it's alright to kind of look in Wikipedia and look at the sources they list and kind of jump to those if you need like background and information on something. But if you're looking more specifically and you're not just looking for other sources or like background information, I would not use it. Definitely do not ever cite Wikipedia for anything because it's not going to be a credible source. But if you want to get a background on something, you need to know something real quick, or you want to look at what sources they have listed, that might be good ones and you'll be able to evaluate those. And anyone can, there's the main Wikipedia site, but also people can make their own individual wikis, like the Wikipedia of Sociology, or we've got one at the library that only staff members can access, the library Wikipedia that kind of talks about processes and policies that we've got. And then I've also included a little video from the Colbert Report, just a funny little thing on Wikipedia. Discussion forums have their own set of criteria and problems related to quality control. Pretty much anyone with an email address can post on a discussion forum, and sometimes you don't even need that. The people posting are, just regular people. They may not be an expert in the field, and sometimes the stuff that you find in discussion forums is not only not factually true, but actually offensive. So that's something more for fun. You don't really want to cite something like a discussion forum, like Yahoo Answers, Tiger Droppings. That's just like an LSU discussion forum. And basically, that's just people having a conversation about something. When you're doing research, you're not typically going to cite what your grandmother says about snowflakes and how they form and stuff like that. So you wouldn't cite these discussion forums either because they're basically a conversation. Okay, now on to the tools that you use to evaluate your sources, websites, or if you're looking at a news article or anything really, you can use these evaluating questions. It's developed from the Merriam Library at California State University. It's just a little acronym, and I have some examples of questions that you would ask yourself for each one so you can determine whether it's good research or it's crap and you shouldn't use it. And the acronym is for currency, relevancy, accuracy, authority, and purpose. So let's talk about currency. Currency is the timeliness of the information. If relevant, when was the information gathered, posted, revised? Are all the links functional and up to date? Is there evidence of newly added information? These are things you want to ask yourself when you're looking at a website or article. Is your research up to date? And does currency matter for what you're looking at? If you're taking a historical perspective on something and you want to see how were research classes taught before computers or something like that. You might want to look in an old textbook, that's 30 years old or something like that to get information. But if you're looking for something just, a regular up-to-date topic like gun control, you want to make sure that that source is within 10 years, first of all, 5 years for medical research, and you want to make sure that it is the most current source available to you. So you can kind of see if even if there's no date posted, you can kind of like check from the links and other evidence of newly added and see if anything has been added recently, and just to make sure it's the most current thing available. Relevancy, the depth and importance of the information. The depth and breadth of the information presented. The depth is how deep it goes into the subject. So how detailed is it, about pottery in 14th century China? How much do they know? Is it just a broad overview, or do they really know what they're talking about and have lots of details? The breadth is how wide it spreads. Is the site, something that is information on all of science, or are they specifically narrowed to microbiology or something like that? Is the information unique? Usually when you first hear this, a lot of people think that unique information is a good thing, but it is actually not. If you found a source today that was unique, for example, one that said that the earth was flat, that would be a bad thing. That source would not be good because it basically disagrees with what scholars have found and agreed upon for years now. When scholars agree upon something, they don't have unique information. If you are more advanced when you're researching, probably not now during college, but you would look at new studies being published, breaking information, that's going to be unique, but other scholars will eventually collaborate and come to find that as a new sort of standard. So if it's not breaking research, you don't want the information to be unique. Is it available elsewhere in print or electronic format? If it has multiple copies, that's like a good sign usually. If it has an electronic format, you might want to check that because it could actually be more up to date. Could you find the same or better information in another source? If you can, don't use this one. Who is the intended audience? This is important because if it's geared towards a certain audience, like people who are more impressionable than you, they might be trying to persuade a certain group of people or something like that. And is it easily determined who the audience is? If it's kind of murky, it doesn't say right out who it's geared towards, that's sort of deceiving. It might be trying to persuade you in sort of a negative way. Does the site provide the information you need? And then just your overall assessment. Sometimes your gut reaction is the most important one. You don't feel comfortable using this. You can't exactly say why, but you wouldn't use it for a research paper. That's important. Accuracy, the reliability of the information. Where does the information come from? Is it cited from Newsweek, or is it cited from a history textbook, or is it cited from the neighbor next door or down the street? Are the original sources of information listed, or are there citations, anything like that that can point to other sources, or is this just all the author's opinion? Can you verify any of the information in independent sources or from your own knowledge? Is this just something that you've never heard before about anyone say about this topic? Like someone asserting that the moon is not actually an object in space, but a big piece of cheese or something like that you can verify is not the truth that from what you learned in school or something like that. Has the information been reviewed or refereed? This is really important. If you're citing a journal and it has been peer-reviewed, that's a great source then, because other scholars in the field have looked it over and checked it and said, yeah, I have used all my knowledge from all the years of schooling and teaching that I've had, and I can verify that this information, it passes the peer review, it can get published. Does the language or tone seem biased? Bias is a big important thing when you're checking for accuracy. If something is biased, it usually affects the quality of the information. You probably wouldn't want to use it. Are there spelling, grammar, or other typos not professionally presented, something like that? Authority, the source of the information. Who is the author, creator, or sponsor? You want to look into that person's details. This is a big one for your course project. I want you, if you don't know who the person is that's publishing it and you want to use the article, you need to Google them. You need to find out more information about them. What are their credentials? What is their degree in? What institution are they associated with? All that sort of stuff. Sometimes the author's credentials are listed right there, especially in journals and stuff. This happens a lot. So that is a sign that they have nothing to hide. You don't need to, look after them. They are presenting their credentials right there as a sign that they know what they're talking about. When people, doctors on their office door have their name, comma, MD. Is the author a teacher or a student of the topic? This is important. Typically, information from a teacher is much better. Sometimes you can use stuff from a published dissertation, but typically you don't want to go out and use a student's website because they're not an expert yet. Does the author have a reputation? If someone has a reputation for publishing things that aren't true and then retracting them, for example, James Fry with A Million Little Pieces has a reputation for kind of lying via his biography. So when you read something by him, you wouldn't think that it was on the best authority. Is there contact information such as an email address? If the website has contact information for the person, you can kind of check with them and verify things. And if the contact information is missing, it's kind of a sign that you're not sure what the credentials of that person are. Has the author published works in traditional formats? This is a sign that the person is a scholar. So if a person has a website, but they've also published, a book, or they've written a newspaper article or a journal article or something like that, that gives them a little more authority here. Is the author affiliated with an organization? A lot of times, if someone is backed up by a news organization or a big university, that's a sign that they're more credible because the university or whoever is throwing their big reputation behind this person's authority. And if the organization supports or sponsors the page, that's even better. They're really saying that this person has a lot of authority. So professors' websites, if they're through the college, they have their web URL has the like tufts.edu or something like that. Their university supports them. What does the domain name or URL reveal about the information? So .edu, .gov, we can consider that those types of sites have more authority than .net, .org, or .com. The purpose of the information. Are there possible biases present in the information? Are the biases clearly stated? Because sometimes you want to cite like an editorial or opinion piece that's published in the paper, and that's fine as long as it says editorial on it. You don't want someone's editorial that they're proclaiming to be a news story written as fact, and then you're kind of misled because it doesn't have clear labeling. Is advertising content versus informational content easily distinguishable? So if they have advertisements on their page, is this something that they have, is it clear that this is an ad versus something that they're endorsing or as a product or they're reviewing or something like that? Like a lot of times blogs, it's hard to tell if they have ads on the side whether is it clear that is this a product that they're reviewing, or is this something part of their site? Is this an ad? Whatever. Is the purpose of the page stated? What is the purpose of the page? Is it to inform, to teach, or is it to persuade you, sell you something? It's important to determine that to know what the bias is. And sometimes, if people have a disclaimer, that's going to be more reliable than if they should have a disclaimer and don't. If they've been comped for whatever if they've been comped for writing the resource in some way by a company, given money or something like that, they should have a disclaimer on their site so you can know to take their information with a grain of salt. So now I would just like to go through a little demo of the CRAAP test for you if we were really searching for research. So I'm going to go ahead and search Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm not using any of the techniques that we've used so far like you would actually do if you were searching for this. And I'm going to kind of scroll down, kind of look at what looks good. And in the top 10 results, I see this one, and I'm going to pick it for a particular reason to go over the CRAAP test because I already know about it. But you can see that it is in the top 10 results. And most people, when they're Googling, don't even scroll past the first page. So this is definitely something a lot of people click on. So let's analyze the currency or the timeliness of the information. right away, I'm going to scroll to the bottom and see if it has a date, because sometimes that's written down there. I can see a date here. It says 1998, a quote from Newsweek. That's not necessarily bad because this is kind of an older topic. I can see that it says new here next to rap lyrics, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that and see how new they mean. I'm seeing dates like 93, 95, 94, 98. Lots of older type information here. So even though it's new, the information is still pretty old. I can also tell that it's not very current just because the site is formatted in kind of the way sites used to be formatted. It looks older. The coding and stuff like that looks older. Now, what about relevancy? Well, I'm looking here and I see that this is supposed to be a true examination of Martin Luther King. Um, but I see things here, learn more about Kwanzaa, Black invention myths, Jews and civil rights. What do these things have to do with Martin Luther King? That makes me question this site and the relevancy of it because it has things that seem unrelated to its purported topic. So let's see. I'm going to click on something here. When the communists took over the country, that sounds a little questionable. And I see that in this paragraph here, communist beliefs and connections. Martin Luther King is a sexual degenerate, an American-hating communist, a criminal betrayer of the interests of his own people. That definitely sounds unique to me. I cannot verify it from my own information. I have never heard something like that before. Seems a little ridiculous to me, and makes me question. I definitely would not use this as a research paper, so it's failing on the second component of the CRAAP test as well. Let's go back to the home page. Onto relevancy. I'm not seeing any sort of sponsor or anything here. At the bottom, I see something that says it's hosted by Stormfront, so I guess I can click to them. And now I can see that it's sponsored by a neo-Nazi organization, White Pride Worldwide. So that definitely is not a proper credential for putting a historical site on the web, and they clearly have a reputation for racism. Not seeing any contact info here. I guess they've got a P.O. box and a telephone number, so a little bit of contact information. And it's a .org, which used to be an organization, but now anyone can get. So it's not looking good for authority either. Accuracy, the reliability of the information. Where does the information come from? Well, some of the information comes from Newsweek, and the original source is listed here. I can't verify anything from my own knowledge because, like I said, I've never heard such bad things about Martin Luther King. I don't see anything about being refereed. I'm not really actually sure that this is quoted correctly from Newsweek. I could go in and check that because it does have the citation information. And that's something that if you use this and you wanted to go a little further, you could do. I'm seeing sources, but I am not seeing anything that even states the author, let alone someone who has reviewed it. And like I said, I can't verify it. Not seeing any typos or anything like that, but it definitely seems biased. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this fails for accuracy as well. And lastly, purpose. Are possible biases clearly stated? Well, in the one that we clicked, The Truth About King, this is not labeled as an editorial, right? It's just presented here like it's factual. There are sources listed, but they seem to be all by this Garrow person and irreverent. So we could check on their reputations and go through those sources if you wanted to do that. But this definitely looks like an editorial, which is unlabeled. That would the bias is not clearly stated. And it seems the overall purpose of the page is to persuade me because it seems to be geared towards high school students. I see at the top it says attention students, our pop quiz. There's flyers to pass out at school, the rap lyrics, educational video, and it's also a .org website, so it passes through the filters that that most schools have to block something like this. So It's trying to, catch young kids and kind of persuade them about this. And so this website is very offensive. I just wanted to give you an example of a site that failed on all counts of the CRAAP test. Sometimes it's a little harder. It fails on one, but not some of the others. But there is a lot of good information out there. You should be able to find something that passes all of them. So now I want to talk about your next assignment quickly.
So the assignment for this lesson, lesson 4, evaluating resources, is this sheet. So I want you to use your Google search skills that we learned in the other lesson, and use them to find a credible website that you can evaluate. If you know what you're doing for your course project, you probably should have an idea by now. This can be one of your sources for your course project, so it's a good idea to just go ahead and get a source now. So use your skills. I'm going to do global warming just as an example, so don't do that as yours. And I'm going to use quotes and the tilde, and I'm going to limit it to just government or educational sites, using all my my Google skills here to you can use other things than what I'm using, obviously. Sometimes people use a .org site, like National Wildlife Foundation or something like that. And you just be aware when you're assessing something like that, they are politically motivated, they have a bias involved, they're campaigning for a certain thing to occur, laws in the government, so they do have a vested interest. So something like that you're going to have to mention under the bias question when you're assessing. So here's my search, and it's only going to bring up government or educational sites for me. And you just kind of look through to see what looks good for you, kind of click around. So this one is from the EPA, the Government's on Climate Change. So what I would do if I wanted that one was I'm going to first paste my search into this search string part, and then click on it, and I'll take the URL and put it in my assignment as well. Don't forget your name up here. Then I can start assessing the website, currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose, all those questions that are in the assignment. I can look through and say, oh, I see some new things, and they actually look new. It's recently updated. I see at the bottom it's updated fairly recently. I can go to about the EPA and talk about who they are, if there's contact information, what the people's degrees are that are writing this, and in addition to that, I know it's already a governmental organization. So you just kind of go through and write a sentence or two for each thing. If it's really clear-cut, maybe one sentence will suffice. Just enough information to prove it for you. And then you can go ahead and turn this in, and you'll have one of your annotated bibliography sources out of the 5 already done. So that will be good. If you have any questions on this, post it to the discussion board or just email me.